The stars above Earth had never seemed so hostile. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the UN Space Defense Headquarters, watching the massive alien ships position themselves around humanity's home system. They had arrived 3 days ago, and their message had been clear and simple: surrender or be destroyed. The alien fleet belonged to something called the Galactic Concordance. 47 different species, all working together under one government that ruled most of the known galaxy. Their leader, a being named Magistrate Kelvor, had sent his demands in perfect English. His translators had done their homework. "We are not here to harm you," the message had said. "We are here to guide you. Your species has discovered faster-than-light travel, but you are not ready for it. You must submit to our authority. We will teach you. We will protect you. We will show you how to join the galactic community properly." The words sounded kind, but the guns pointed at Earth told a different story. Admiral Chen had read between the lines easily enough. This wasn't an offer. It was a demand wrapped in polite language. In the corner of the command center, Dr. James Morrison was reading through everything humanity had managed to learn about the Concordance. The aliens had been generous with information, probably thinking it would make humanity more likely to surrender. They had sent historical records, cultural files, and details about hundreds of other species they had incorporated into their empire. "Admiral," Morrison said quietly, adjusting his glasses as he read from his tablet, "I've been going through their records. Every single species that has reached FTL travel in the last 12,000 years has joined the Concordance. Every single one. And?" Chen asked, her eyes never leaving the holographic display of enemy ships. "And they all surrendered within a week, most within days. The Concordance shows up, makes their demands, does a small demonstration of their weapons, and the new species agrees to join." Morrison paused. "We're the first ones to ask for time to think about it." Chen allowed herself a small smile. "We're the first ones to say maybe." "They don't understand what that means," Morrison continued. "I've been analyzing their cultural files. The concordant species are all highly logical. They make decisions based on mathematics and probability. When they see a stronger force, they submit. It's logical. It's smart. It keeps everyone alive, but," Chen prompted. "But humans don't work that way," Morrison said. "We're not logical when someone threatens us. We're stubborn. We're spiteful. We'd rather burn everything down than let someone tell us what we can and cannot do." On the main screen, Magistrate Kelvor's face appeared. He was a crystalline being, his body made of what looked like living glass that shifted colors when he moved. His species had evolved on a high-pressure world where cooperation meant survival. The idea of refusing help was completely foreign to him. "Admiral Chen," Kelvor said, his voice coming through the translators as calm and patient, "your 72 hours are nearly complete. Have your people made their decision?" Chen looked around the command center. Every person there was watching her. She thought about the emergency meetings that had been held over the past 3 days. Every nation on Earth had voted. Every colony in the solar system had sent their response. Every single human ship and station had been contacted. The vote had been unanimous. Not a single dissenting voice. Even the people who hated each other, who had been fighting over resources and territory, had agreed on this one thing. "We have," Chen said clearly. Kelvor's crystalline face showed what might have been relief. "Excellent. We are pleased that you have chosen wisdom. Please transmit your surrender documents and we will begin the incorporation process. It will be painless. Within a generation, your children will thank you for this choice." "You misunderstand," Chen said. Her voice was steady, but there was steel underneath. "We're not surrendering." For a moment, there was only silence. Kelvor's face shifted through several colors that the translators couldn't interpret. Confusion, perhaps, or disbelief. "I do not understand," Kelvor finally said. "You have seen our fleet. You know our power. Your species has had faster-than-light travel for only 3 years. We have had it for millennia. Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are slow. There is no logical path to victory for you." "You're right," Chen agreed. "There isn't. Then why refuse? We offer you peace. We offer you knowledge. We offer you a place in the greatest civilization the galaxy has ever known. Why would you choose death instead?" Chen leaned forward, her hands pressed flat against the console. "Because you didn't offer us anything, Magistrate. You made demands. You put guns to our heads and told us we had no choice. And humanity has a funny reaction to being told we have no choice. This is illogical, Kelvor said, and now his voice carried an edge of frustration. You are choosing extinction over prosperity. Maybe, Chen said, but it's our choice to make, not yours. Behind her, every screen in the command center showed the same thing. Every human military vessel was powering up weapons. Every colony was activating defense systems. Every station was preparing for war. And from Earth itself, ancient nuclear silos that hadn't been opened in 100 years were coming back online. The message went out simultaneously from every human vessel, every station, every colony. It was broadcast on every frequency, in every language the translators could handle. Just one word, but it was enough. No. Kelvor stared at the transmission in what could only be shock. You are making a terrible mistake. Probably, Chen admitted. But it's our mistake to make. You crossed a line, Magistrate. You came to our home and told us we couldn't be free. And now you're going to learn what happens when you cross humanity's boundaries. The transmission ended. In the command center, nobody spoke. They all knew what was coming. War against an enemy that had conquered most of the galaxy. War against odds that were mathematically impossible to overcome. War that would probably end with humanity's extinction, but they had said no, and that mattered more than survival. Magistrate Kelvor had lived for 400 years. In that time, he had overseen the incorporation of 23 different species into the Concordance. Every single one had followed the same pattern. Show up with overwhelming force, make reasonable demands, wait for the logical decision to be made, and welcome a new member to galactic civilization. Humanity was breaking the pattern. They cannot be serious, said Council Member Treshanak, a being that looked like a floating collection of silver spheres. No species has ever refused us. They must be bluffing. Kelvor wasn't so sure. He had been studying the human responses carefully. There was no fear in their broadcasts. No hesitation. Just cold, absolute refusal. Perhaps a demonstration is in order, suggested another council member. Nothing major. Simply destroy one of their outer stations. Show them what resistance will cost. They will surrender immediately. The council voted. The decision was unanimous. Kelvor gave the order, though something in his crystalline core felt uneasy about it. The target was selected carefully. A mining station near Jupiter. Long-range scans showed it was abandoned. The humans had evacuated it after the Concordance arrived. It would be a clean demonstration. No casualties, just property damage. The Concordance weapons fired. The mining station disappeared in a flash of light. Clean, efficient, merciful. Then the human broadcasts started coming in. The Europa mining station was not abandoned. Admiral Chen's voice said across every channel. 3,000 volunteers chose to stay. 3,000 people who believed that someone needed to show you what you're really doing. 3,000 people who wanted you to know that you're not peacekeepers. You're murderers. Kelvor felt something his species called crystal fracture. It was the closest thing to horror his kind could experience. They had checked. The scans had shown the station was empty. The humans had hidden their life signs somehow. They had let their own people die just to make a point. What kind of species did that? Magistrate, said Triskala, one of his junior officers. She was young, only 50 years old, and this was her first incorporation. I've been reviewing the human cultural files we downloaded. I think we may have made an error in judgment. Show me, Kelvor commanded. What Triskala showed him made his crystalline structure go dark with dread. Human history files, thousands of years of warfare. Humans fighting humans with weapons that ranged from simple stone tools to nuclear bombs that could destroy entire cities. And the creativity of their violence was terrifying. Chemical weapons, biological plagues, kinetic bombardment, weapons designed specifically to cause maximum suffering. And then, strangest of all, treaties where they agreed not to use certain weapons because they were too horrible even for humans to accept. They wrote rules for war, Triskala said quietly. They have things they consider too terrible to do, even to their enemies. But Magistrate, look at this section. The rules only apply when both sides agree to follow them. What are you saying? Kelvor asked, though he was beginning to understand. I'm saying we never agreed to follow their rules, Triskala said, which means they don't have to follow them either. Dr. Morrison appeared on every concordance screen at once. He had hacked their communication system somehow. His face was calm, but his eyes were cold. You wanted to know about humanity, Morrison said. Let me educate you. We've been fighting wars since before we learned to write. We've killed each other over land, resources, religion, and ideology. We've developed weapons that could destroy our own planet 100 times over. And you know what stopped us from using them? Not wisdom, not logic, just the knowledge that if we destroyed ourselves, we couldn't keep fighting. Morrison pulled up image after image. Ancient battles, medieval sieges, world wars that killed millions, nuclear explosions, biological weapons that could end civilizations. You crossed a line, Morrison continued. You came to our home and killed our people, and now you're going to learn what humans are really good at. We're good at spite. We're good at revenge, and we're very, very good at making sure that if we go down, we take everyone with us. The first human attack came 6 hours later. Concordant sensors detected ships approaching at high speed, small vessels barely bigger than fighters. The defensive systems targeted them automatically. Easy kills. Then the ships did something unexpected. They didn't try to dodge. They didn't fire weapons. They just accelerated faster, pushing their engines beyond safe limits. They rammed the Concordance vessels at relativistic speeds. The physics were simple. An object moving at a significant fraction of light speed had kinetic energy that made nuclear weapons look weak. The human ships were small, but at those speeds they hit like meteors. 4 Concordance cruisers were destroyed in the first wave. 8 more were heavily damaged, and the human pilots had all volunteered. They had known it was a one-way trip. They're insane, Treshanak said in horror. They're killing themselves to hurt us. More attacks came. Human cargo ships that turned out to be hiding military weapons. Medical vessels that launched biological attacks that targeted Concordance computers. Even terraforming equipment was somehow weaponized, creating gravity distortions that ripped ships apart. And the worst part was that humans kept broadcasting their casualties. Every death, every name, every story. 3,000 at Europa Station. 500 pilots in the first ram attacks. 2,000 more in the following battles, and humanity didn't surrender. They kept fighting. Kelvor watched one broadcast in particular. A human pilot named Marcus Webb had just rammed his vessel into a Concordance destroyer, but before he died he had transmitted a message. "This is for Europa," Webb had said. "This is for every species you've forced to bow. This is for freedom, and we have 8 billion more where I came from. How many can you afford to lose?" The Concordance fleet had started with 600 ships. After 2 weeks of fighting, they had 420 left. The humans had lost more in terms of raw numbers, but they didn't seem to care. For every human ship destroyed, 2 more appeared. They're not fighting to win, Triskala realized. They're fighting to make it too expensive for us to continue. Kelvor looked at the casualty reports. Concordance forces had never experienced losses like this. Not in 1,000 years. His people were warriors, yes, but they were logical warriors. They fought when victory was assured. They retreated when the cost became too high, but humans didn't retreat. They didn't calculate odds. They just kept coming. And for the first time in his 400 years of life, Magistrate Kelvor understood what fear truly felt like. "Request reinforcements," he said quietly, "and send a message to the Concordance Council. Tell them we may have started a war we cannot win." 6 months into the war, and the galaxy was watching in disbelief. The Concordance, an empire that had ruled for 12,000 years, was bleeding. And they were bleeding because of one small species that had barely learned to travel between stars. Admiral Chen stood in what remained of the command center. A Concordance attack had damaged the facility 3 weeks ago, but they had kept it running. Humans were good at making things work even when they were broken. It was a skill they had learned through countless wars with each other. "Report," she said to her tactical officer. "We've lost another colony ship near Proxima Centauri," the officer reported, but they took 2 Concordance frigates with them before they went down. The civilians fought back with mining equipment and construction tools. Chen nodded. That was the pattern now. Humanity had militarized everything. Cargo haulers carried hidden railguns. Medical ships could deploy biological weapons with an hour's notice. Even the terraforming equipment on colony worlds could be repurposed into weapons that manipulated gravity or atmosphere. The Concordance kept learning this lesson the hard way. They would attack what they thought was a civilian target, only to discover it was armed and ready to fight. And if the humans couldn't win, they made sure to take as many Concordance ships with them as possible. The phrase that had started circulating among human forces was simple: Spite Protocol. If you were going to die, You made sure the enemy paid the maximum price. Every human ship had self-destruct charges that were far larger than necessary. If the Concordants tried to board a vessel, they got a nuclear explosion for their trouble. Any word from Marcus Webb? Chen asked. Webb's on his 17th kill, the officer said with something like awe. He's figured out how to eject before impact at the last second and survive. Recovery teams keep finding him in the debris. Marcus Webb had become a legend, a pilot who had survived 17 ramming attacks through a combination of skill, luck, and pure stubbornness. The Concordants had put a bounty on him specifically. Humanity had responded by making sure his face was on every broadcast, showing the enemy that even their most wanted target couldn't be stopped. On the other side of the solar system, Magistrate Kelvor was having the worst day of his very long life. The reinforcements had arrived 2 months ago, 300 additional ships bringing his total fleet to over 700 vessels. It should have been more than enough to crush humanity. Instead, he now had 400 ships remaining. The humans had destroyed 300 Concordance vessels in 6 months. 300 ships from an empire that had barely lost that many in the past 1,000 years of peace. How? He asked Triskala, who had become his closest advisor. How are they doing this? Our ships are faster. Our weapons are stronger. Our shields are more advanced. By every logical measure, we should have won in weeks. Triskala pulled up a tactical display. They're not fighting a logical war, Magistrate. Look at this battle near Mars. We had superior numbers. Superior firepower. We should have won easily. The display showed the engagement. Concordance ships had surrounded a small human fleet. Victory should have been assured. Then the human ships had done something insane. They had vented their atmosphere, disabled their life support, and used that extra power to overcharge their weapons. The human crews had been in spacesuits, operating in frozen ships with no heat, no comfort, just enough oxygen to keep fighting, and they had won. They sacrifice everything for small advantages, Triskala explained. They'll disable safety systems to get more power. They'll vent heat sinks directly into space even though it damages their ships. They'll do things to their own vessels that we would consider sabotage. They're destroying themselves to hurt us, Kelvor said. No, Triskala corrected gently. They're accepting damage to themselves to hurt us more. There's a difference. They've calculated that they can take more pain than we can. A new message came through. It was from Dr. Morrison again. The human scientist had become humanity's unofficial spokesman, explaining to the Concordants exactly why they were losing. You're wondering why we're winning, Morrison said in his broadcast. It's simple. You fight wars to win. We fight wars to make sure the other side loses. You calculate acceptable casualties. We don't. You have rules of engagement. We have suggestions that we ignore when convenient. Morrison pulled up images of historical human conflicts. This is what you're fighting against. A species that invented chemical weapons, then decided they were too horrible to use, then used them anyway when things got desperate. A species that split the atom and immediately asked how to make it into a bomb. A species that wrote entire philosophies about the moral way to conduct war, then ignored all of it when survival was on the line. The broadcast showed more footage. Human ships being destroyed but taking Concordance vessels with them. Human colonies fighting to the last person with improvised weapons. Human children learning to operate defense systems because all the adults were dead. You wanted to incorporate us into your peaceful empire, Morrison continued. But you never asked us if we wanted peace. And the thing about humanity is that we're actually pretty good at peace. We went nearly 100 years without a major war before you showed up. We were learning, growing, improving. Morrison's face hardened. And then you came along and reminded us what we're really good at. You reminded us that when someone threatens our freedom, we don't calculate odds. We don't make logical choices. We fight. And we keep fighting until either we win or everything burns. Kelvor turned off the broadcast. He couldn't watch anymore. The Concordance Council was demanding answers. Why hadn't he won yet? Why were casualties so high? Why was a primitive species managing to resist the greatest empire in galactic history? He didn't have good answers. How could he explain that humans didn't follow logical patterns? That they would rather die than surrender? That they treated war crimes not as lines they wouldn't cross, but as tools they would use when desperate? Magistrate, Triskala said softly. The council is calling. They want a status report. Kelvor steeled himself and opened the communication channel. The Concordance Council appeared, all 47 species represented. They looked at him with various expressions of disappointment and confusion. Explain yourself, Council Leader Vexithera demanded. You have lost nearly half your fleet to a species that has had space travel for less than a decade. This is unacceptable. They do not fight like any species we have encountered, Kelvor tried to explain. They are willing to accept catastrophic losses. They weaponize everything. They have no regard for their own safety. Then destroy them completely, Vexithara ordered. Stop trying to incorporate them. Exterminate them. Glass their planets. End this embarrassment. Kelvor had been afraid of this order. Council Leader, if we escalate to planet destruction, the humans have made it clear they will respond with weapons they have kept in reserve. They claim to have developed planet-killing devices and positioned them in secret throughout nearby space. You believe them? Vexthera asked. Yes, Kelvor said simply. They have already demonstrated weapons we thought were impossible. They have shown creativity we cannot match, and they have made it very clear that if they burn, they will take us with them. The council chamber was silent. Finally, one of the other members spoke. You are saying we cannot win? I am saying, Kelvor chose his words carefully, that victory may cost us everything we have built. The humans do not want to win. They want to make sure we lose. And they are very good at it. The message came through on all frequencies, impossible to block or ignore. It was Admiral Chen's voice, but this time she wasn't speaking just to the Concordance. She was speaking to the entire galaxy. To every species under Concordance rule, Chen said clearly. We know you're listening. We know many of you were forced into this empire just like they're trying to force us. We know you've been watching this war and wondering what it means. In the command center, Dr. Morrison stood beside her. They had planned this broadcast carefully. It was time to change the nature of the war. Here's what it means, Chen continued. It means the Concordance can bleed. It means they're not invincible. It means that if one small species that barely knows how to travel between stars can hurt them this badly, imagine what all of you could do together. The broadcast showed footage of the battles. Concordance ships being destroyed. Human victories against impossible odds. The mighty empire brought to its knees by spite and determination. We're not just fighting for ourselves anymore, Chen said. We're fighting for every species that was told they had no choice. We're fighting for every civilization that was forced to surrender. We're fighting to prove that the Concordance's age of domination is over. Across the galaxy, something stirred. Species that had been conquered hundreds or thousands of years ago began to remember what freedom felt like. Small acts of rebellion started. Refusals to follow orders. Sabotage of Concordance facilities. Nothing major yet, but the seeds were planted. The Concordance Council was in chaos. This is disastrous, Vexithera said, his voice shaking with rage. They're encouraging rebellion across the entire empire. We must crush them immediately. But the council was divided now. Some members wanted total war. Others were looking at the cost calculations and realizing that even if they won against humanity, they might lose control of their entire empire in the process. Magistrate Kelvor had made a decision. It was probably going to cost him his position, possibly his life, but he couldn't continue down this path. I request a meeting with Admiral Chen, he announced, face to face. On neutral ground, the council erupted in protests, but Kelvor stood firm. We are losing this war. Not militarily, though even that is questionable. We are losing it philosophically. The humans have made us look weak. Every day we continue fighting. More species begin to question our authority. We need to understand them before they destroy everything we have built. After hours of debate, the council reluctantly agreed. A neutral station was selected, an old diplomatic facility that hadn't been used in centuries. Both sides would bring minimal security. It would be a conversation, not a battle. Admiral Chen accepted immediately. 3 days later, they met. The station was cold and empty, powered up just for this meeting. Chen arrived with Dr. Morrison and 2 guards. Kelvor brought Triskela and his own security. They faced each other across an ancient conference table. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Kelvor's crystalline form shifted to a color that Triskela had told Chen meant profound confusion. Why? Kelvor asked simply. I have read your history. I have studied your culture. I understand that you are capable of violence, but I do not understand why you choose extinction over peace. We offered you knowledge, technology, a place in galactic civilization. We offered you everything, and you chose death instead. Why? Chen leaned back in her chair. You offered us everything except the one thing that matters. Which is? Choice, Chen said. You didn't offer us anything, Magistrate. You made demands. You showed up with guns and told us we had no choice but to obey. And humans. We have a very specific reaction to being told we have no choice. Dr. Morrison pulled up a display. Let me show you something about human psychology, he said. We evolved on a world that was actively trying to kill us. Predators, diseases, weather, other humans. Everything was a threat, and the only way we survived was by being too stubborn to die. The display showed Earth's history. Humans surviving ice ages. Humans crossing oceans in tiny boats. Humans climbing mountains that killed most who tried. Humans going to space despite the risks. We're persistence hunters, Morrison explained. Do you know what that means? It means our ancestors didn't kill prey by being faster or stronger. They killed it by following it until it collapsed from exhaustion. We're not the biggest or the strongest species, but we absolutely refuse to give up. That still doesn't explain choosing death over surrender, Kelvor said. Doesn't it? Chen asked. You came to our home and told us we couldn't be free. You told us we had to give up our independence. You told us we had no choice, and that activated every single survival instinct we have. Because to humanity, being told we have no choice is the same as being told we're going to die. And if we're going to die anyway, we might as well take you with us. Triskala spoke up for the first time. I've been studying your wars, your history. I found something interesting. You have rules for war, the Geneva Conventions, international laws, things you're not supposed to do even to your enemies. That's right, Morrison confirmed, but those rules only apply when both sides agree to follow them, Triskala continued, and we never agreed. Which means you're not protected by the rules we made for each other, Chen finished. You wanted to know why we're using weapons we banned for use against ourselves? Because those bans only apply to humans fighting humans. You're not human. You don't get the protections we give to our own species. The implications hung in the air. The Concordants had assumed that the weapons humanity used against them were the worst humans had. They were wrong. Humanity had been holding back, using only the weapons they felt comfortable using against an outside threat. What would you use against us if you stopped holding back? Kelvor asked quietly. Morrison and Chen exchanged glances. Do you really want to know? Morrison asked. Yes, Morrison pulled up a new file. Biological weapons that target specific genetic markers. We've been studying the DNA of every concordant species we've encountered. We could create diseases that only affect your people. Nanomachines that break down crystalline structures like yours specifically. Weapons that cause nothing but suffering before death. He paused. And that's just the biological options. We have concepts for weapons that manipulate spacetime, bombs that create miniature black holes, devices that could potentially destabilize stars. We haven't built most of these because we decided some things were too terrible even for us. But you would build them, Kelvor said, if we push you far enough. In a heartbeat, Chen confirmed. You think we're fighting hard now? We're still playing nice, Magistrate. We're still trying to minimize our own casualties where possible. We're still operating under the assumption that a peace agreement might be reached. But if you force us to choose between extinction and taking the entire galaxy with us, we'll burn it all down. The conference room was silent except for the hum of the life support systems. Finally, Kelvor spoke. What do you want? We want you to leave, Chen said simply. Withdraw all your forces from human space. Pay reparations for the 3,000 you killed at Europa Station, and announce to the entire galaxy that any species that wants independence can have it. That would destroy the concordance, Kelvor said. Yes, Chen agreed. It would destroy your empire, but it might save your species. Because the alternative is we keep fighting until one of us is extinct. And we've already proven we can hurt you badly enough that every other species under your control starts getting ideas. How long before your empire tears itself apart anyway? Kelvor's crystalline form went dark. He was facing the end of everything his civilization had built. But he was also facing the possibility of complete extinction if the war continued. I will take your terms to the council, he said finally. You do that, Chen said. And Magistrate? You have 48 hours to give us an answer. After that, we stop holding back. The galaxy held its breath. Every species with the ability to monitor communications was watching. The Concordance Council had been in emergency session for 36 hours straight. They had 12 hours left to respond to humanity's ultimatum. Admiral Chen sat in the command center, watching the clock count down. Around her, every human military asset was on high alert. If the concordance rejected the terms, humanity would unleash everything they had been holding back. It would be mutual destruction on a scale the galaxy had never seen. "Do you think they'll accept?" Dr. Morrison asked quietly. "I don't know," Chen admitted. "They're logical beings. They should see that continued war will cost them everything. But logic and pride don't always play well together." On the Concordance flagship, Magistrate Kelvor was facing the Council. The debate had been fierce. The hardliners wanted to continue the war, to show the galaxy that the Concordance could not be defeated by a primitive species. The moderates were arguing that the cost was already too high. But there was a third group that Kelvor hadn't expected. A group led by Trisakala and other younger officers who had been studying humanity closely. "We have made a fundamental error," Trisakala was saying to the Council. "We assumed that because we were more advanced, we were superior. We assumed that because we had more ships, we would win. But humans don't measure victory the way we do. They measure it in whether or not they maintain their freedom. And by that measurement, they've already won. Because no matter how many of them we kill, the survivors will never surrender. Then we kill them all," Bexthara said coldly. "We glass every human world. We eliminate them completely. And then what?" Triskala challenged. "Every other species in the Concordance has been watching this war. They've seen that we can be hurt. They've seen that resistance is possible. If we exterminate humanity, we prove that we're tyrants, not peacekeepers. And then we face 200 rebellions instead of one." The council chamber erupted in arguments. Kelvor let it continue for a moment, then spoke in a voice that cut through the noise. "I have a confession to make," he said. The room fell silent. "I have been studying our own history, the history we do not often speak of, and I have discovered something disturbing." He pulled up ancient records, files that were thousands of years old. "When the Concordance was first formed, we were not the peaceful federation we claim to be today. We conquered. We threatened. We used overwhelming force to compel other species to join us. We were, in essence, doing exactly what we are doing to humanity now." The council members shifted uncomfortably. "Over time, we forgot this," Kelvor continued. "We convinced ourselves that our empire was built on consent and mutual benefit. But it was built on the same thing we are offering humanity now, the choice between submission and destruction. We have simply had so many centuries of peace that we forgot how we achieved it." He turned to face Vexathara directly. "The humans are holding up a mirror to us. They are showing us what we used to be, and they are refusing to become what we forced so many others to become. They would rather die free than live under our control. So what do you suggest?" Vexathara asked. "I suggest we accept their terms," Kelvor said. "All of them. We withdraw. We pay reparations. And we announce that any species that wishes to leave the Concordance may do so freely. That will destroy us." Another council member protested. "No," Kelvor said firmly. "It will transform us. The species that wish to remain will do so by choice, not by force. We will become what we always claimed to be, a voluntary federation. And the species that leave will remember that we let them go peacefully. In time, some may even choose to rejoin us. But this time it will be their choice." The vote was called. It was close. Very close. But in the end, the moderates and the reformers outnumbered the hardliners. The Concordance would accept humanity's terms. But there was one problem. A group of hardliner ships refusing to accept the Council's decision broke away from the main fleet. 200 vessels commanded by officers who would rather die than surrender to a primitive species. They set course for Earth itself. One final attack, one last attempt to put humanity in its place. Admiral Chen watched the breakaway fleet approach and felt a cold fury settle over her. "They want to make this personal? Fine. Activate Protocol Omega." Dr. Morrison looked at her in shock. "Admiral, that's—" "I know what it is," Chen interrupted. "But they need to understand. They need to understand completely. Send the signal." Across the galaxy, in systems the Concordance had never discovered, weapons activated. Weapons that humanity had been building in secret since the day the Concordance arrived. Weapons positioned near every major Concordance homeworld. The message went out to both the main Concordance fleet and the breakaway ships. "This is Admiral Chen to all Concordance forces. The devices you are now detecting near your homeworlds are planet-killer weapons. Each one has enough power to sterilize an entire world. They are fully automated and will activate if we do not send a daily deactivation code." Chen's voice was cold as ice. You have a choice. The breakaway fleet can continue toward Earth and you can try to destroy us. You might even succeed. But if you do, those weapons will activate and every Concordance homeworld will die. Every single one. Or you can stand down and we can all live. The galaxy watched in horror. Humanity had built doomsday weapons and positioned them in secret. They had prepared for mutual destruction on a scale that made the war so far look like a minor skirmish. Magistrate Kelvor made his decision. He personally led a loyalist fleet to intercept the hardliners, and when they refused to stand down, he gave the order to fire. The breakaway fleet was destroyed. Destroyed by their own people, Kelvor himself killed the commander of the hardliners, a fellow Concordance member who had served for 300 years. Enough, Kelvor said simply. Humanity was right. We crossed a boundary we should not have crossed, and now we pay the price. The Treaty of Titan was signed 3 weeks later. The Concordance withdrew from all human space. They paid reparations for the 3,000 dead at Europa Station. And they announced to the entire galaxy that any species wishing to leave the Concordance was free to do so. Over the next year, 217 species declared independence. Some formed new federations. Others chose to remain alone. A few, surprisingly, chose to remain in the Concordance, but now as true partners rather than subjects. 10 years later, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the Memorial Park on Earth. Before her was a wall with 3,000 names. The volunteers from Europa Station, the people who had died to prove a point, the people who had shown the galaxy what humans were willing to sacrifice for freedom. She was old now, retired from military service. The war had taken its toll on her, not just physically but mentally. She had ordered actions that still kept her awake at night. But she had secured humanity's freedom, and that had to count for something. "Admiral?" a voice said behind her. She turned to see a crystalline figure. Magistrate Kelvor, also retired now, also older than he had been. "Just Sarah now," she said. "I'm not an admiral anymore." "And I am no longer a magistrate," Kelvor said. "I came to pay my respects. To apologize, though I know it changes nothing." They stood together in silence, looking at the names on the wall. "I wrote a book," Kelvor said finally, "about the war, about what we did wrong, about what humanity taught us. I called it The Species That Said No." Sarah smiled slightly. "Good title. I want to ask you something," Kelvor said. "If we had not withdrawn when we did, would you have activated those weapons? Would you have destroyed our homeworlds?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Yes," she said finally. "Because you had already killed 3,000 of us for refusing to surrender. If you had continued, if you had tried to destroy Earth, then yes, we would have taken you with us. All of you." "That is what I thought," Kelvor said. "Humans are terrifying." "No," Sarah corrected gently. "Humans are free, and we're willing to pay any price to stay that way. You could have learned that the easy way by asking us what we wanted. Instead, you learned it the hard way by telling us what we couldn't have." A young alien approached them, one of the species that had gained independence after the war. They carried flowers, placing them at the memorial. "Thank you," the alien said simply to Sarah. "My people remember. You didn't just fight for yourselves. You fought for all of us." After the alien left, Kelvor turned to Sarah. "The galaxy is different now. Messier, more chaotic, but perhaps more honest." "Freedom is messy," Sarah agreed, "but it's worth it." They stood together a while longer. Two old warriors from opposite sides, both scarred by a war that never should have happened. Finally, Kelvor spoke one last time. "We crossed humanity's boundary, and the results were beyond imagination. We thought we would gain a new subject species. Instead, we freed 200 civilizations and destroyed an empire that had stood for 12,000 years." "You didn't destroy it," Sarah said. "You transformed it. The Concordance still exists. It's just different now." "Better, maybe?" "Perhaps," Kelvor said. "But humanity taught us a lesson we will never forget. Never tell a human they have no choice, because they will choose freedom every single time, even if it means burning the entire galaxy down to ash." Sarah smiled. "Now you're learning." As they walked away from the memorial together, the names on the wall stood testament to a simple truth. Humanity had been threatened with extinction. They had been told they had no choice. And they had responded not with surrender but with defiance. The galaxy had crossed humanity's boundary, and nothing would ever be the same again.